For many hundreds of years, one question stumped some of the greatest minds of the ancient world. Where do eels come from? People caught eels in both saltwater and freshwater in almost every country in the world, but no one knew how these odd creatures multiplied. There was no obvious genitalia to be found, and no eggs had ever been seen. The Egyptians believed that eels were spontaneously born from the mud of the Nile during the rainy season. Pliny the Elder thought that new eels were the sheddings of old eel skin. This mystery continued to plague the scientific community right up until the 20th century. Even great thinkers like Sigmund Freud and biologists like Charles Darwin could not find the answer to this biological wonder. But here in Scotland, we had our own ideas as to how the eels were born. It was once a very common belief in the highlands and on the borders that eels would grow from stray or discarded horsehair which fell into the water. In a tale from the island of Harris, we can see this superstition in practice. It was said that in a time of great scarcity, a local man from the village would go out fishing in order to feed his family. Unfortunately for the man, all he could catch was eels, which were not commonly eaten in the highlands. His wife and children outright refused to consume the slimy eels. The man himself thought that there was nothing wrong with his catch, and so sat down to a lavish feast of cooked eel. Not long after the man had eaten his strange dinner, he began to act very oddly. Soon he began to scream and shout, lashing out in a violent rage. His wife, fearing for her life, took the children and ran out of the house. The man seemed to give chase, but once outside, he headed into the woods with the air of a crazed beast. After some time, the woman and the children would come upon a shooting lodge in the middle of the woodland. Upon entering, she would find the lodge filled to capacity by a local hunting party. The panicked woman would tell of her husband and his mad outburst after consuming the eels. With some haste, the men followed the woman home with loaded guns. There they beheld an unbelievable sight. The woman's husband, still in a violent rage, was fist-fighting a horse in a field. The man struggled and lunged, throwing punch after punch towards the horse, who was fighting back with equal ferocity. Some of the hunters made their way between the crazed fighters, but it was to no avail. Both the man and the horse would stop at nothing to kill each other. This went on for days, and eventually it was decided, for the good of both fighters, they would have to be shot. So on one cold morning, the hunters returned to the field where the man and the horse still battled. They raised their weapons and fired, killing both participants. With the madness finally cured, the body of the man was taken for medical examination. A local doctor would perform an autopsy, and through these proceedings it would come to light that the man's stomach was filled with a tangled mess of horsehair. The cause of his madness was the eels he had consumed, which reverted to their true form in his stomach and possessed him to fight the horse. I think this odd story shows that in Scotland, many people, even those of high education, once truly believed that eels grew from horsehair, and that horses throughout Scottish folklore have been granted mysterious and magical powers. Thank you for listening, and I, for one, will be staying away from eel for quite some time. I would like to say a special thank you to all my patrons who make all of these videos possible. While covering this odd superstition, I found that the concept of eels coming from horsehair could actually be found in quite a few places, specifically England and America. I wonder if this superstition was taken to these places by the Highlanders who were displaced during the Great Clearances. In America, this belief was still thought to be somewhat true, even in the 20th century. An article I found in the Los Angeles Herald from February 1903 even suggests that if one places a handful of horsehair in a bucket of water and leaves it for 9 days, the hair would become animate and wriggle around in the bucket. Once again, thank you all for listening, and I will see you next time for some more Scottish folklore. Slán Siva.